At my old school, right by the parking structure, there was a flower bush buzzing with bees. Students walked past it daily, and the sound of wings filled the air. But one day, instead of relocating the bees, the schools made a decision. They were going to exterminate them, and they did. Overnight, the hum was gone. The flowers stood silent, and what seemed like solving a nuisance was actually part of a much larger problem. Across the world, bees are being silenced, and with them, so much of life as we know it. Bees are not just insects, you see. They are lifelines to our ecosystems and our food supply. On October 1st in 2023, the Sunday Mercury reported that 87% of plant life depends on pollinators like bees, and one-third of food we eat relies on their work. Without them, our diets would collapse, a little more to just grains and leaving us nutritionally bankrupt. But beyond food, the disappearance of bees threatens biodiversity and the economy itself. Today, I want to show why saving bees is not optional, it's essential. First, I'll explain the problems bee extinction creates. Then, I'll walk through the major causes of their decline. And finally, I'll share solutions that the government, communities, and individuals like you and me can take to protect them. Let's start off with the problems. The extinction of bees creates three major ones: threats to their food supply, collapse of biodiversity, and massive economic losses. So to begin, let's start off with the danger of our food supply. The threat is immediate and alarming. On the 30th of January in 2023, the Fed News reported on Penn State studies showing that honeybees pollinated more than 100 crops in the US. They're directly responsible for one-third of the food America eats. Yet between April 2019 and April of 2020 alone, 43% of US bee colonies were lost without bees. Grocery stores would look unrecognizable. Fruits, vegetables, and nuts would vanish off the shelves, leaving us with, again, little more than grains like wheat and rice. And if losing food variety wasn't enough, the ripple effect of bees' decline stretches into the natural world. On the 19th of February in 2025, the Daily Mirror reported that in Sri Lanka, a certain community who for centuries harvested wild honey as part of their culture are now endangered because of climate change and deforestation, leaving them struggling to find hives. Their fading tradition reflects what global scientists call a pollination crisis, and without bees, ecosystems unravel. Plants fail to reproduce, food chains collapse, and the cultural traditions disappear right alongside biodiversity. But beyond ecosystems and tradition, the decline of bees also carries a heavy financial toll. In October 1st of 2023, the Sunday Mercury estimated insect pollination is worth around $577 billion annually worldwide. Honey and silk alone bring in tens of billions. If bee populations collapse, it won't just be an ecological tragedy, it will devastate farmers, industries, and entire rural economies. The problems are clear. Our food, our ecosystems, and our economies are all on the line. But what exactly is driving this collapse? Let's look at those three main causes. Bee extinction is not happening by chance. It's being driven by three main forces: chemical exposure, climate and habitats, and the lost combined effects of pollution and parasites. First, pesticides and chemicals are one of the most damaging factors. On January 30th of 2023, the US Fed News Service highlighted how pesticides and those in industrial agriculture are among the top causes of colony loss. And this isn't just happening in large farms. In April 2025 and 26, the press of Journal Dundee warned that even home gardens produced like label-friendly for bees can harm pollinators. They urge individuals to avoid chemicals and industry plants, a variety of native flowers. Whether on a global scale or in our backyards, chemical exposure is still prominent and creates creatures that we need to keep our crops alive. But pesticides aren't the only problems. Climate change and shrinking habitats are just as destructive. The Daily Mirror on the 19th of February in 2025 described how droughts, floods, and invasive plant species in Sri Lanka are stripped away nectar and resources, making hives scarce, and this isn't only an issue in Asia. On the 24th of April in 2025, The Land told a story in Australia about beekeeper Caitlin Wall, who now runs an educated program to teach children about food security. She points out that 3 out of 4 of their favorite foods depend on pollination, both globally and locally. Shrinking habitats and changing weather are leaving bees without the resources they need to survive. And if climate stress weren't enough, pollution and parasites are pushing bees past the breaking point. On the 22nd of April, 2025, the Leicester Mercury reported findings from the University of Leicester showing that air pollution disrupts bee gut microbiomes and weakens their immune systems. Meanwhile, parasites like the Varroa mite spread deadly viruses, wiping out colonies. The US Fed News Service in January 30th of 2023 confirmed that mites, extreme weather, and pesticides together create a perfect storm. Bees are not just dying from one factor, they're being hit from every side and every angle. So far, we've seen devastating problems and major causes, which I've just listed and told you. But with every problem, there's a solution, and it begins with us. Although the crisis is severe, there are three solutions: stronger policies in research, community education, and of course, individual action. At the global level, we can coordinate policies. On the 21st of May in 2025, the Balance System reported on the 5th International Conference of Bee Pollination Conservation, where experts from more than 25 countries shared strategies. From legal protection to conservative plans, international cooperation and funding research are essential to these steps. Conferences like these show that solutions exist. They need to be acted upon. While global policies are important, the real change starts closer to home, within our own communities. On the 24th of April of 2025, The Land profiled how Caitlin Wall's grassrooted program and the New South Wales are inspiring children to care about bees by showing them most of their favorite foods dependent on pollination. She's planting the seeds in their brains for long-term change. So, community efforts like this prove how education can reshape how society views and values our own pollinators. But community change, again, is only part of the solution. Individuals can take steps to help. Those small actions add up a big amount. On the 26th of April in 2025, the Preston Journal outlines simple ways individuals can make their gardens pollinator-friendly. To start off, planting native flowers across the seasons, avoiding pesticides and leaving wild corners untouched, even installing bee hotels, potentially. These small actions, again, sound small, but across multiple neighborhoods and cities, even countries, they can create safe havens and sustain entire bee populations. So whether through policy, community, or personal effort, solutions are within our reach. But the real question is whether we will choose to act on it. You see, when my school exterminated the bees near the parking structure, it may have seemed like an easy solution to a local nuisance. But that act reflected on what's happening across the globe. Bees are not just being exterminated by chemicals and climate change, but by human neglect and short-sighted, drastic decisions. If we allow this to continue, the silence won't just be in schools and gardens. It will echo through orchards, farmlands, and forests. It will be the silence of empty fields, of vanished traditions, of lost economies. But unlike that, exterminations at my school, we can choose differently. With stronger policies, community education, and perhaps action, we can ensure the hum of bees continues. Saving them is not just about protecting insects. Saving them means saving ourselves.